Behind every bit of mom wisdom is a story of a real mom and real kids just trying to love each other well. Whether you're cozied up on the couch with a mug of coffee, pulling out of car line and heading to work, or out for a walk, you're welcome to join us as we share stories and laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the I'm On Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the I'm On Podcast. I'm Abby. I'm joined by Susan, Chloe, and Megan, and I'm telling this week's story. It's called The Center of the Universe. Now, obviously, here at iMom, we want you to give your kids attention. That's kind of what we do. The mission of the podcast, our website, imom.com, and the daily emails that we send out is to help moms love their families well. But after I chatted with a friend, I stopped and thought a little bit about whether or not there's such thing as giving your child too much attention. If you have a child with special needs or a neurodivergent child, giving your child attention is a totally different thing. They demand attention for different reasons. So listen with that in mind. So I was texting with a friend, and she told me that she and her husband have been getting into a lot of fights lately over their kids. He said that he doesn't think they have good boundaries with them. And I said, well, what does he mean? And she's like, well, basically, he's criticizing the things that I'm doing for them as their mom. His biggest frustration is that in the evenings, they're completely centered all around the kids. He said they have one night a week where they're either not going to a practice or going to take the kids to a play date or stuff like that. And she says, well, they can't drive themselves. Everything that he brings up, she kind of has a reason for. And to her, she's making sacrifices that are part of parenting. And I agreed with her. I said, yes, but at the same time, do our kids see that their needs don't always have to come first? There's a difference between helping your children live their lives and then putting their lives ahead of everything else. And she said that the final straw was when he was making a move one night. And their 7-year-old son came in their room and knocked on the door and asked if he could climb in bed with him. And she's like, I have such a hard time saying no. He's 7 and he's not always going to want to climb in bed with us. And he wanted to cuddle. And so she told her husband, he's only going to stay for a minute. And next thing they knew, they were all asleep, right?
His move must not have been very good.
That's true. Put it back on him. I like that. And I've also noticed when I'm at her house, and I'll say that she's a great mom and her kids are great. So it's not, just keep that in mind. I'm not dogging my friend. Do people say dogging anymore, Chloe?
Yeah.
The
sure.
Young person, well, I just did, so I'm
I like it.
Sticking with it. I noticed when I'm at her house that her kids do dictate a lot of what's going on, like whether she can have a conversation with another adult. There have been times where we've been talking and one of the kids interrupts, and her comment to me, and kind of her mindset is like, they won't let me have a moment to myself. And so I was thinking, well, maybe her husband's concerns are legitimate. Maybe they are running the show, and the amount of attention she's giving them is starting to be counterproductive in helping them become, self-reliant or realize where their place is in the hierarchy of the household. So here's my question for you guys. And how do we know where that line is between giving our kids too much attention and being a good mom?
I'd say the first sign is if you look at your child and say, you know what, mommy has to do something else right now. You're going to have to wait. And they can't. Then you've been giving them too much attention. Mm-hmm. Or in the case of, no, you have to sleep in your bed because this is daddy and mommy's time, and they can't. Mm-hmm. Then you've clearly been giving them too much attention because they demand, have to have it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a test. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that I've noticed in times where my kids have wanted my attention and I haven't given it to them, that sometimes really good things happen after that. Like they want me to do something with them and I can't. And then they go off and they end up accomplishing it by themselves, or they end up doing something creative that they otherwise wouldn't have done. But we have a really, an article that has been very popular, especially on social media, signs you're giving your child too much attention. And again, if you have a child that has a special need, I think that these rules are going to be very, very different. But here are some signs that maybe you're giving your child too much attention or your home is too child-centered. One of them is that you cook separate meals for the kids. I think that happens with a lot of parents. Like we still do that. If we have salmon at my parents' house, my mom will make little meatballs for the boys because they don't like salmon because there's certain foods that kids just probably don't like. But if every night, you're going out of your way to prepare that second meal, then are you telling your kids that the kitchen revolves around them?
Well, that's what I was going to ask because I have a 2.5-year-old And a majority of the time, he is not eating the same thing that we are eating because we also like really spicy stuff and just stuff I know a 2.5-year-old's not going to like. So like at what age do you need to start getting them to eat whatever you're having? And on nights where I think it's appropriate for him, I will have him try and eat that first. But I mean, at what age is it like?
I do think age is a
different
factor.
podcast.
No, episode. Food. I do think age is a factor, but when they get to be a little bit older, right? I mean, Susan's motto is they're not going to starve if they don't eat dinner. So, Did you ever make separate meals?
I did not. But I had 5 kids. Or can you imagine?
Yeah, you'd be a shorter to cook.
Wait, even when we were really little?
Of course. When you guys were really little, I mean, 2, they can't eat what you eat. But, once they hit 5, 6, because think about it. It is harder today, I think, because we eat out so much more and there's so many more food intolerances and allergies and what have you. But you really are setting them up to be the center of the world when you start catering. It's catering.
Literally.
It's catering. And the worst thing is, and I've told that story, I think, before about having another child over and all they wanted was bread and butter for lunch. Yeah. And so then they go to other people's homes.
That's all Chloe wants for lunch.
Yeah.
Facts.
And then you realize they're a terrible guest everywhere they go because they can only eat certain things. And so...
So what's a good, this is kind of a tangent, but a good tip for moms who do have the kid who's kind of a picky eater. I think that one thing that I've read is to get them to always try at least one bite, which is kind of like common sense. Yep. Just try one bite because their taste buds are always changing. They might like something new that they didn't like before. And that's also kind of asserting your authority. You're saying you at least need to do this one thing and then you can eat the other stuff that I prepared.
I think you also say, okay, eating is about growing and being healthy. And if you don't want to eat, that's your choice. That's what my pediatrician said. They're not going to starve. Eventually, they're going to eat. And that's the thing. We're training them only to eat the best of the best. Instead of, hey, eating is something, that shows consideration of other people. If you go to somebody's house and they make you something, just do your best to eat what you can and tell them thank you for the meal.
So another sign that maybe your home is too child-centric or you give your kid too much attention that is if your child interrupts conversations between adults. I think this is naturally what kids do. I mean, I interrupt conversations between adults, but I think when it happens consistently and he doesn't understand why it's rude, then I think that's where it is. It's like they're asserting their power over
what kind
the situation.
of interrupting are we talking about?
I think just generally stepping in and, you're having a conversation with your friend in the living room. He's playing in the other room and he comes in and says, Mom, can you take apart these Legos that I need you to whatever? And you're like, well, I'm in the middle of something here. And I think if it consistently happens, because there's the age where kids don't realize that life happens outside of their head and you have to understand that. But when you correct them and say, well, I'm in the middle of something, you're going to have to wait. And then it's consistently happening over and over again. I think that's where the problem is.
We taught our kids that trick. I can't remember where we learned this either, so I should give credit to somebody where if we're having a conversation, they have to come in and they just have to lay their hand on your arm.
That's exactly what I do with my boys.
And it was great because then you clearly know, because a lot of times, I hate to say it, we frustrate the child. We're just oblivious. We're in this conversation. They're trying to get our attention. And you have to remember how old is the child and how long can I make them wait? Because if you're going to make a 4-year-old wait for 10 minutes, that's too long. So they put their hand on your arm, then you should immediately turn to your friend and say, hold on 1 minute, because they're being polite and reward them by saying, thank you for letting me know that you need something. Can I help you?
Yeah.
In a polite way.
What I do with my guys, and it really only my older son does it. My little one doesn't. He's not as, the word I'm going to use is needy, but he doesn't come to me as often as my older son does. And so he knows, he puts his hand on my shoulder. If I'm having a conversation, he puts his hand on my shoulder and I won't be able to continue the conversation if he is still touching me. I won't be able to focus. And so then I put my hand on his and he knows I'm acknowledging, I hear you, I'm going to get to you, but just wait. And then he'll take his hand down. And it's been working. It's a good little system that we have there.
How old are your boys? Are 8 and 10? Mm-hmm. And the 8-year-old does
the 10-year-old does it.
I'm just trying to gauge for the 10-year-old. Okay, I'm trying to gauge for age.
But he's been doing it for a while. We've been using that probably for 3 or 4 years, actually. And again, the little one he hasn't needed it. He doesn't really interrupt much.
And I can see how the hand on the shoulder and you touching his hand, it builds even a trust with your son.
It lets them know without interrupting your conversation that I see you waiting.
Right.
I see you.
Yeah.
Because the hand is telling them, I see you, and I'm going to get to you. Because if you just keep talking, they're just going to keep pushing because they don't feel like you're listening.
Hello.
Yeah. And I think, we always, as moms, our kids are always on our minds in some way or another. And this is a way of kind of physically acknowledging it. Like, even though you're behind me and I'm in the middle of another conversation, my mind is on you as well, you know? What about this one? So you have no adult space. I might not be the best person for this one because I have a very tidy house because my house isn't very big. There are toys and Legos and things all over my living room that I have no living room anymore. I don't have any space to go to. And so my kids' stuff is all in their playroom or all tucked in their little drawers and stuff in their room.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were talking about adult space, like you and your husband, like that kind of personal space, or are we talking about actual physical house space?
Well, it means if there's kids' toys in your bedroom, or every space is a spot for your child to take over.
I think it also can be a time period. Like for me, when my kids were little, poor Megan had to go in her bed and take a nap or read books for 2 hours every afternoon. Every child. This is my time.
I would kill if someone would let me do that.
Yeah, right.
No, because it was my time. I just need 2 hours in the afternoon where everyone is quiet. You don't have to sleep, but you are in your bed for 2 hours. That was my time to regroup the house, start getting dinner ready, whatever it was. It was my space. It's
about having space to breathe. So whether it's a physical space or a mental space, that, if we don't have that, it's boundaries that you have with your kids. Yeah.
That's good.
What about if you stay home because of your child's behavior? Megan, you mentioned, I know in another episode, that you have gone home because of your child's behavior. You said that you had to take James out of a situation and you guys went home, just the two of you.
Yeah. Are we saying that we're too afraid to go out in public because our child's going to misbehave?
Yeah.
I mean, your kid's going to have to go out in public sometime. So
Megan's taking her 2-year-old to London. So she's not she's not in this group.
He has to learn at some point. And if there's a meltdown, then we leave. But I'm such a social person. I couldn't be cooped up at my house.
I think that this one could be true for older kids. But when your child is even, 6 or 7, I don't know if staying home because they can't keep their hands to themselves, I don't know if they'll put that together that, we're staying home because of you. And I don't know any moms that would be like, we're not going to so-and-so's house because you're misbehaving.
And I think so much of parenting is training your child. And so if you never put them into situations where they have to be trained, how are they going to learn?
Instead of you being the parent who is supposed to be training your child, you're letting your child dictate what's happening, which then you're just in a circle of chaos. For sure. Right. And then the old classic, if your child sleeps with you every night. This is a hard one, and this is a controversial one, because some people think as long as the child wants to come in, they can come in. And I understand, from heartstrings point of view, why moms want to do that. But it's really about reactive co-sleeping as opposed to this is what we plan. We're fine with him being here. If you're just reacting to his need to come in at any time, I think that's where you might be sending the wrong message.
It's so funny. Things like this crack me up because when you think way back in the old days, and still in some impoverished nations, the whole family sleeps in one bed.
Sure.
And so all these things we talk about throughout time have worked for some families.
But they're for different reasons, right?
Right, exactly.
They slept in the same room, in the same bed, because that's just what they did. It wasn't because the child was forcing themselves to come in the room.
But I feel like in all these things, if we just used common sense and just look at, this co-sleeping thing, it's becoming a manipulation tactic of the child. Therefore, for this child, we need to do this. It's all sensing how do you need to train the child in the next step of their phase of gaining independence toward adulthood. And that's the journey they're on, gaining independence toward adulthood.
Yeah.
And now I do, to get a little bit more nuanced, I do have friends or people that I've known where their kid cannot fall asleep unless they're in the bed with them. So it's forcing the parents to nap time, bedtime, go get in bed and lay in bed with their kid until their kid falls asleep. So they can't go anywhere past 7 because they have to go get in bed with their kid. And that to me is a problem if the kid can never fall asleep without you.
See, I know people like that too, and I agree. But I also think at some point they're going to grow out of this. My mom used to, when I was freaking out over one of my boys sucking his thumb, She's like, Abby, he's not going to walk down the aisle sucking his thumb. Like it's
it will come to an end.
Yes, it will eventually come to an end. Eventually, that child is going to be able to sleep by himself. I don't know what's happening, mentally between here and then that's affecting them, but I don't know. Sometimes.
Oh no, I'm more thinking about the parent and their mental sanity.
Well, they're not. They're
I'm
clearly
not worried about the kid. I'm more worried about the parent and the fact that like they can't go out on a date. They have to be at their house by 7, and at whenever the nap time is to go lay in bed with the kid for an hour. And
I will say this: it's not necessary. So it is a life choice they're making. My husband would not let our kids ever sleep with us, ever. He's a very light sleeper, and so. Not one of our children ever slept with us, and they all learned. Yeah. So you're just delaying the training because, like you said, sooner or later they got to stop. And so it's a life choice you're making as a couple. If you want to give up going out, that was one of your points. You stay home because of your child's behavior. You're staying home. That's a life choice you're making. If you're both okay with that, eventually, you're going to have to teach them. Yep. You're just delaying it.
I'm in the same boat. Neither of my boys have ever fallen asleep with me. And it makes me kind of sad because they're cuddly and sweet. But like I'm also a light sleeper, and they like their beds. Yeah. And they would come and like lay down for a second, and then I'd be like, "You ready?" And like, "Yeah." Bye. Okay.
Like, is that a boy thing? Because James will never do that either. He will not fall asleep
I don't think it's a boy
on
thing.
me, with me. He likes to be in his own space.
No, I don't think it's a boy thing. I think it's a personality thing. And you too. It's a combination of personalities. Yeah. But that's another good point is, I think maybe the most dangerous of all of these, if we are going to call any of them dangerous, it's that your child comes before your husband. When you're having to give your child so much attention that you're not paying any attention to each other, then you're not only keeping your marriage from growing and thriving, but you're sending your child the message that mom and dad aren't united and that their relationship is not, you're missing out on opportunities to do that, to show them how much you love each other, which will give them that security and peace.
And one little thing, like you said, they could outgrow, but it could slip into something else. Yeah. A lot of these manipulation things we're talking about are little children, but little children become big children who learn how to get their way in other things. So the spouse thing, but I'd take it even one further. It could come between you and your spouse. It can also, take away from you personally, your sanity, your sleep, because if you cater to your children like that, you are going to run yourself ragged. Yeah. And at some point, everything you don't do is then going to make you feel guilty. So not only are you going to be tired, you're going to be beating yourself up at the same time. It's a slippery slope.
Do you think life is kind of set up, though, where our kids have to be the center of our attention?
No, because you look at the old days. They were farmers. They had to get up and go do stuff. The kids had to entertain themselves or do chores. This is some of it a product of us having more time and discretionary income. Right. We can make our children the center of our world. We can give them all this stuff. We read so much more about, to be a good parent, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. That I think we're kind of heaping it on ourselves.
I think so too. The women's group in my church has asked, so my group is like a group of younger moms, and then there's like older, every group gets a little bit older and older. And they have asked us many times to step up and be in leadership roles and to be more active. And our response is always, almost all of my time is dedicated to either work or my kids or my husband. There's just too much happening at home now. And I asked my mom, because she was in the same group when she was a mom my age. And she's like, it was different. Life was different then. We did have more time because there weren't as many activities. My fourth grader and I were doing homework together until 8:15 the other night because I'm so afraid, and this is me. I mean, it's him too a little bit, but it's more me. I'm so afraid of him not getting good grades on his report card and, quote, failing, not actually failing the class, but failing that we have to sit down and do all the work. We have to make sure that he's prepared. We have to make sure he knows his times tables. And so I think that it's like a perfect storm of all these things that come together and make us feel like we have to give our kids all this attention. Comparison.
Yeah, I don't remember my parents ever helping me with my homework. Isn't that so funny?
Wow.
Ever. Not once.
Because you're so smart.
No, it's because they just didn't do that back then. Yeah. A, there wasn't as much homework. B, your parents did not help you. And I had great parents.
Do you guys think it's a little bit of an effect from maybe this generation of moms feeling a lack of attention from their parents and wanting to give their kids more?
I think it's just a more competitive society. Like when I took the SATs, like my parents didn't sign me up. I just signed up one time. I took them one time. When my kids went to college, it was like, oh my gosh, you have to take it 4 or 5 times. You got to hit a certain level. You got to apply to this many schools. It was so much more involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that with playing soccer in college. My dad and I spent hours on the computer emailing coaches and doing all these scholarship things, filling out essays, everything. It was really time consuming.
Yeah.
I just read a story about, and maybe you've heard it because it's kind of more of just an anecdote, but the college student, the boy who's a freshman, and he didn't do well on his paper, and his mom calls the professor, to check in, and the professor's your son shouldn't be in college. I wonder if that's kind of the advanced version of this. It's like you're just enabling your child. And I feel kind of, as we're talking, I want moms who are listening not to feel judged. I don't want to come across as judgy. I feel like it's really, like I said a moment ago, what life has set up for us. It's so hard to not feel like a bad mom if you're not doing all these things.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, I feel like I kind of have the opposite problem. The other night we were sitting here in our living room and I look over and my husband and I are both on our phones and my toddler's playing in the corner with toys by himself. And I felt horrible. I was like, I swore I was never going to be that mom that was like on her phone. And he even asked me, he's like, come play toys with me. And I just felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just ignoring him because I'm on my phone.
But I do think the flip is there should be times when children can play by themselves. And you can say, no, this is my time. I'm catching up on some reading or whatever. It's the balance. It's the knowing that you have these time zones to do these things and that they're getting the balance.
When you asked a moment ago, Chloe, about making up for the way we were parented, I just heard someone say something like balance is the thing that you find when you're swinging to the other side. And that's so much, as moms and in culture, that's what we end up doing. We're overcorrecting and there's that little point of balance, like right in the middle, but then here we go, kind of off.
I think there's one other thing we didn't hit yet, and that is what happens when you have multiple children and you have the one who steals the attention all the time, and the others learn to compensate and be on their own, and that one just is always...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just the other night, I said to my son, who I do homework with until 8:15, and I'm not proud of this, but I shouted at him. I said, I don't even know where your brother is right now. I don't even know where he is. He was in the bathroom, which is kind of a safe bet. He's probably going to the bathroom.
For 4 hours.
Yeah. He has like a stack of books on the back of the toilet. But that's exactly the case. That is exactly it, is that one child demands more of your attention. And I find myself so grateful that my little one is so like chill and, does his own thing. But at the same time, I'm like, what am I doing to this boy?
How do I even it out? Or how is it becoming a habit where they start to expect it? Oh no, he gets all the attention. I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah. One time we have a book, a friend of mine made it for me, and she took a picture of my older son. His name is Liam. She took his picture and sent it to this company, and they put his face like drawn on bodies of different professions. And it sounds weird, but the book is called "What is Liam Going to Be?" And every page is a different profession. There's a scientist and an astronaut and a this and a that. One day, and this was recent. This was probably like a year ago. So the little one was 7. I found him with the book crossing out Liam's name and writing in Graham. So on every page is, what is Graham going to be? And I was like, I looked online to see if I could find the book to get one for him. And I couldn't find the company anymore. It's like nowhere. But that was like a very obvious, very tangible, like him acting out going, you're not giving me enough attention. And so
what am I going to be, Mom?
Yeah, exactly. Help. He swears he's going to be a professional basketball player. And like the kid, I'm like, you shoot for the stars, son, you can do it. So if you think you do have a child-centered home, so what are some ways to get control back? Little tangible ways they can get control back.
I think awareness is the first thing, what we're talking about. Like, are my kids, is one getting too much attention? How are they manipulating me to get attention? Am I giving attention because I'm guilty or they really need attention? When have I asked them to give me some time And do they respect that? Do we have those opportunities for them to show me that they can manage the boundaries? And
I think little things like the little tip we were talking about with putting a hand on the shoulder is real, letting them know it's not that I don't see you. It's not that I don't care about you. It's just that here's a boundary and you have to respect that.
You know, the other thing is we have all those talk questions on the website where you can, like, different subjects, there's questions to ask your kids. And I think that's the kind of thing where it's quality, good attention. Like, are you giving that kind of attention that means something and that is building the relationship and helping you to understand and know them, you know, to make sure that you're doing that from time to time and not just giving them the...
Yeah, because it's attention that your kids count as quality.
Right.
So, Chloe, I know that you posted this article on Facebook and it got a lot of comments. A lot of people, a trend that I'm seeing, a lot of people are kind of defending themselves and saying, I give my child a ton of attention and he turned out just fine. There's no such thing as too much attention.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're actually doing it to this extent that we were talking about, or if people just don't want to think that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the comments are saying that they're equating attention to love. And I'm thinking just about the different ways we've defined too much attention. And is it a way that our kids would receive love? Or is it something we do out of obligation? Is it something we do out of guilt? Is it something we do because all the other moms are doing it, so I need to be doing it too? So I think kind of getting down to, it's nuanced of what is the attention defined as.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you give attention at the wrong time or in the wrong way, you're actually inhibiting the child's growth because you're teaching them negative things. So let's say they're doing something wrong, something like they're screaming at you, and that's when you give them attention is when they scream. Then you're teaching them in their future relationships, hey, screaming at someone is an okay way to get attention.
Yeah.
So that doesn't equate to love to me. It is a training behavioral thing, and it can be done in the wrong way.
Yeah, but the undivided attention of doing a talk printable, pillow talk conversation, that attention. I remember like just going on little dates with my mom. Like she would take me out to a coffee shop, and of course she wouldn't give me coffee because I was a child, but I would sit there and drink my chocolate milk or whatever. And we would talk and have girl time and little conversations like that. Quality, undivided attention. Yes, that is something that needs to be given to a child, but it's the, little outbursts and giving those things too much attention where, like you said, it inhibits the child.
I think that what it boils down to really is that, when you look at this list and this article that got all these Facebook comments, is reading it with nuance, like you said, Chloe. Like if you look through the list, you're like, well, my kid does this and he's fine. But if it's because the child is trying to manipulate and you know your child best, and maybe it's not manipulation, maybe it's just your lifestyle, and that's fine. But if you know that you can sense that there's manipulation, or you have lost control and your child is controlling the situation, then maybe now you're stepping into just a little bit too much of a child-centered home.
Here's the thing. If your child does one of these on this list, like my one son was a picky eater. And now at the age of 27, he's a foodie. Like he'll eat anything. He likes to go out to eat.
Oh, no. He's a picky eater, but like healthy,
super healthy now. Yeah.
Picky eater. And it used to be like junk food.
Eater. Yeah. So he did outgrow it. And so again, if your child does one of these things, no big deal. If your child's doing a lot of these things, then you're child-centric, and it's probably at some point going to catch up to them. It's going to be a kind of rude awakening.
So what's a sign that you have turned controls over to your kids? Maybe it's not that you're giving them too much attention. Maybe it's that your home has become child-centric, or your life has become child-centric. And then how do you get that control back? How do you find balance again? Tell us via the link in the show notes. And that's also where you're going to find links to our socials, like we were talking about, and then everything we talked about in today's show. We know you have a lot going on, so subscribe to the podcast so they can come straight to your feed automatically, and you have one less thing to do, more attention for you. And be sure to rate us on iTunes so that other moms can find us too. Instinct plays a big part in parenting, but sometimes you need the help of a mom friend. iMom's team of writers have kids of all ages and personalities, so no matter what you're dealing with, you can find wisdom on imom.com. Dating, discipline, tattling, or just ways to show love to the difficult child. We have a different voice than a lot of mom sites today, so join millions of moms who use imom.com as a source of ideas, insight, and inspiration to love their families well. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal. Edited by Isaiah Gunther.